Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over NVIDIA stock. Let's go over what has happened to the stock on a pretty painful day for the stock, after not doing a whole lot for the last decent amount of time, and just to experience another 6% drop, it is pretty painful. But I'll give you my thoughts on what this actually means for the stock, moving forward and all that good stuff. So as per usual, if you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, my thoughts on the charts, etc., and you want to hear my thoughts and updates on the technical analysis and updates on the charts and my thoughts on what the charts are looking like as the market is trading every single day, I have a YouTube membership. The link is below. Just $3 a month. Gives you access to mainly Tesla updates, sometimes other stocks when I see opportunities, or $5 gives you access to the second tier, which includes the first tier, plus gives you access to the NVIDIA updates if you're interested. But jumping into it, NVIDIA down 6% on the day, closing at 113.5 per share, which compared to the market, is going to be a bit of an underperformance. Market definitely suffering today as well, right? QQQ down almost 2%, but it's roughly holding where I wanted to so far though. But yeah, NVIDIA definitely getting hit a lot harder, which, hurts a little bit more. Why? Because, it really hasn't done that much for the last few days, right? It's been definitely underperforming the last few days. And today, once again, essentially another underperformance. But is this all bad, or is there still hope? Let's talk about it. So first and foremost, let's get the obvious things out of the way. NVIDIA obviously broke down from this, very large bullish pennants, right? It broke down from this bullish pennant. And again, this was a bullish pennant, but you have to remember, just because something's called a bull flag or bull pennant or, whatever, it doesn't mean it has to play out in a bullish fashion. It's usually the case, but if it was that easy, it would be too easy, right? It's not always the case, right? There are instances where bullish or bearish patterns don't play out, like we saw in Tesla for not that long. Remember this little bear flag that we had right over here, massive fall. Tesla set up this little bear flag down here, and what did it do? It rocketed up instead, right? So again, you have to understand, these patterns aren't bulletproof. Just because it's a bullish flag or a bullish pennant doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to go up, right? You have to understand that, right? That's important to understand, and that's why risk assessment and whatnot is crucial, especially in a market like this. Now, let me go into this. So we broke down, right? This is what I was sharing with my members in the morning, somewhere in the morning. Let me see if I can find the post. I did share this with my members in the morning. This thing decides to update properly. Here. NVIDIA risking a breakdown here would not be good for bulls. Needs to bounce pretty much right now. And then, we didn't get that bounce, obviously, right? So we ended up falling through. Now, what does this mean though? So we came down to the next area, which I also told my members about, 113. Let me see if I can find that post. I'm sure you believe me. I'm sure I don't need to. Here you go. You can see right here. NVIDIA is entering defense mode for me now. You can see this is before it really broke down. This was still back when it was sitting at 115.5 actually. This is when I exited it with break even. 1 hour breaking down under this pennant, and the weekly showing the weakness yet again. Not convincing enough for me. If this breakdown follows through, we can see NVIDIA back to 113 to 112 by Friday, where I'd expect a stall and a bounce short term. We actually got there right away, right? The market's moving pretty quickly nowadays. So we ended up getting right into that area. And this is that next kind of support area, right? Starting at 113 roughly, which is exactly where we pretty much are right now, more or less for NVIDIA, all the way down. Why does it say 139.49 here, but then here it says 113.70? Anyway, whatever. But then, all the way down to arguably, honestly, even closer to 111. But I'd want to see ideally 112 to 113 hold. And this is the first kind of, other major demand zone that can signify a bounce, essentially, right? And that's kind of what the stock is trying to do. Now, you have to understand the 1 hour chart, it is a little bit oversold, right? Why is it oversold? Because number one, even the 8 exponential moving average, we're a little bit below it, right? We're, extended too far down, which is why we're getting a small bounce. And I wouldn't be surprised if NVIDIA bounces to about 115 to as high as 116 and change, potentially even tomorrow, maybe Friday. I'm personally just sitting in cash liquid puts now. I did a small day trade and I exited pretty quickly because I do think the stock is actually pretty weak now. Because despite us, being a little bit oversold, the RSI is oversold, though I'd rather see a bullish divergence before I'm more confident about it. So essentially we get this pump and then go lower, and then the RSI essentially does this and makes a higher low while the stock makes a lower low. That's what I would want to see, and that's where I get more confident. And that's where I'll probably start looking to sell 2 weeks out, maybe even 3 weeks out puts on the stock. But the reason I'm selling puts is because there is weakness now in the stock. I'm not super confident about any immediate short-term upside movement, anything meaningful, at least not yet. Why? Because, we broke down below this pennant. That's not good. I don't like breaking below these kind of pennants. I don't like these bullish patterns and that end up actually turning into a bearish outcome. I don't like that. I don't think anyone likes that. But yeah, that's not a good sign, obviously, despite it technically being oversold, and there could be a small bounce in store for NVIDIA. Like I said, I don't think it's going to go much higher than that small bounce, personally speaking, at least for now. Also, we have the exponential moving averages. They have officially crossed back to being bearish on the 1 hour chart. Again, there's a difference between the green crossing the red alone, which you'll have a lot of false signals like you did here, like you did here. But when both of them start getting back under the white line, which is that 50 exponential moving average, that to me signals the fact that there's stronger weakness in the stock, like, less bullish momentum is coming in and arguably more bearish momentum is coming in. That's exactly what we unfortunately have done today. So that combined with that bullish pennant that we broke down under in a bearish fashion are not signs that I like, right? They're not signs that I like, even though I think there might be a short-term bounce in store for NVIDIA, as early as tomorrow. So what is the next step for NVIDIA? That's the question, right? Okay, so we have all these situations. It's not in a good look right now. It's concerning, blah, 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 blah. But what is the next step for NVIDIA? Well, this is where we can look at something like the daily chart, right? Or, the 1 hour chart is pretty good at it too, right? And obviously, I think at this point, there's a good chance that it honestly continues down even lower and maybe looks for a double bottom down here at around 106, right? We could be potentially printing a very large double bottom like this. That now becomes a possibility. And one thing I'll be looking at moving forward is I'd want to see these exponential moving averages reclaimed and cross bearish, kind of like what it did over here. That'll be the next thing I'll be looking for. Until I see that, either the stock falls significantly where I just buy shares outright, or for now, when I see, this bullish divergence on the 1 hour, I'll just be selling cash secured puts, mainly because, again, I just don't expect the stock to go anywhere crazy just yet. I need to wait for better confirmation, and that's a safer way to play, in my opinion. So that's something else I've been looking for on the 1 hour chart. The daily chart, obviously, suggests something that could be more bearish in theory, right? Obviously, this suggests that same thing. We can get that, beautiful looking double bottom, that situation like this. That's a possibility, which would be a retest of about 105. Or if things really, if shit really hits the fan, essentially, this becomes a possibility that NVIDIA comes back down once again to the bottom of this downward channel that we're still haunted by. The NVIDIA is, it's still not out of the woods of this downward channel. Like, there's still work to be done for it to escape this. I think eventually it will, but it's absolutely not just yet. Right? So, when it was this oversold on the daily and it did revert back to the mean, essentially the mean at this point will be roughly the 21 exponential moving average. You can either look at that or you can even look at, the regular mean like this. It's the same idea, the exponential moving average, and this is essentially the 20-day moving average. Same thing at the end of the day. It's slightly different, obviously, but for most situations, it's more or less similar. It's close enough to where it's not a big difference. Anyway, so the one thing I'll be looking at, is a potential double bottom. But, if shit really hits the fan, there is a very real possibility that maybe even pretty aggressively, it goes sub 100, comes back to the bottom of this trend line, comes right back into this area of demand over here that was, massive pivot point, for instance, back here at about 97-ish dollars per share. And that, to me, if we actually get that, would be an absolutely phenomenal opportunity on the stock. I don't know if we'll get it. Nobody knows if we'll get it. Maybe we won't. Maybe we will. Nobody knows. But as of right now, I do unfortunately have to switch to leaning bearish until proven otherwise. And essentially until these exponential moving averages are reclaimed on the 1 hour chart. Because if we can't even reclaim them on the 1 hour chart, we probably are not going to have, any good shot at reclaiming them on the daily, which is also unfortunately still flipped bearish, right? While we're in this downward channel. So there are some signs of concern. We didn't get that one more pump higher that I was hoping for. I don't want to use the word hoping for, but I was expecting, I guess, to 25, mid 120s to potentially 130, like I mentioned, because this, again, bullish pattern unfortunately did not play out in a bullish fashion. So sometimes it's just, that's how the cookie crumbles. So what else is there? I think that's the majority of it, right? So yeah, at this point, I have to start leaning bearish. I do think that short term there's a bounce as early as tomorrow. I do think it's a little bit oversold on the 1 hour chart, but I do expect this kind of 113 to as low as 111 region to start to hold. That's where I do expect this kind of bullish divergence. Like if we get the small bounce and then make our way lower like this, that's where I expect that bullish divergence to start kicking in on the stock. I do think it'll place at least somewhat of a short-term bottom, maybe for like a week or so, right? And then from there is a chance that it just continues sliding down even further on this continued weakness, down to at the very least a double bottom situation over here, sitting at around 105, 106, 104, somewhere around there, to as low as about $96 per share, which is the bottom of this channel once again, where it can get a pretty significant bounce if that actually comes. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, it's not the end of the week yet, so it's still early, but let's go back to the weekly chart. Everyone's favorite chart on NVIDIA, the weekly chart, the thing that's just not been convincing, right? We had 2 weeks in a row where we did close back above the 50 exponential moving average, barely holding on to this, very large wedge that we are in. This one right here, you can see, right? But again, and I've mentioned this before, it's not really been all that convincing most of these weeks. Arguably this week back here on end of March was not too bad, honestly, or early March, I should say, it was not too bad. But you know, last week and so far this week's candle, I can't say they're very convincing. Like they're not, I mean, they're just not very convincing, right? So this is something that the stock really needs to fix. And it not only needs to essentially now, I mean, this, you know, it's a higher threshold, 117.5 to about 118 and change, needs to reclaim and close that by the end of the week, which, I mean, it's technically possible, but at this point, I don't know if I would fully bet on that, honestly. I'd rather let it happen and then go off of that, as opposed to sitting and looking at it right now and thinking, yeah, it's going to happen, because it's looking less and less likely. But the issue on top of everything else is, you know, yeah, losing this wedge, losing the 50 exponential moving average, but you have the 8 and the 21 over here getting closer and closer and closer to crossing back under that 50 exponential moving average on the weekly. Again, if I see these two bad boys up here, the red and the green line, cross back and like both of them go under the 50 exponential moving average, which, you know, this one can happen in a matter of a few weeks if the weakness continues, that would be pretty bearish. I'm not gonna lie, that would be pretty bearish. And I think at the bare minimum, this 97 to as low as 90 region is unquestionably, okay, I shouldn't say unquestionably, there's always a chance it's not, nothing is guaranteed, but it really becomes a major target for me, at least. So yeah, I don't know, that's just the situation I find in NVIDIA right now. It's looking weak. I'm not gonna lie, it's continuing to look weak. There's a lot of work for bulls to do to fix this chart, and it's possible. It is possible. It's fixable, but they got their work cut out for them. I will admit it's not looking good, guys. I'm not gonna lie, it's not looking good, right? Because every time we've had these closures back above here, there was just no follow through. That's the problem with the stock right now. Is yes, it was holding on and, you know, essentially dancing on thin ice, but you know the ice was still intact. The problem is the fact that there was just no follow through from bulls to actually send it higher, essentially, right? It really couldn't maintain anything meaningfully higher. Every time it tried anything, it would just get sold off aggressively again and again and again. And that 1 hour pattern, that bullish pattern that we were in, was that opportunity. This was that chance for the bulls, in my opinion, to send it higher and to really fix the weekly chart and to really, you know, instill confidence back. We didn't get that, and instead we actually broke down to the downside. That, you know, that is definitely a red flag for me. So yeah, that's just my thoughts. I still think the stock is short-term a little bit oversold. I do expect a bounce from this region right around here, and I do think that it'll potentially come up and retest this breakdown on this wedge, which again could be up to about 116 or so. But there is a chance that rejects and we just ultimately go potentially meaningfully lower from there. So I don't know, man. Let's see. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. Don't get me wrong. I hate being a bear. I don't short stocks. I don't do anything. If a stock looks bearish to me, I pretty much just avoid it. But this has some concerning signs to me now that this bullish pattern did not play out in a bullish fashion. So let's see. We'll take a step by step, day by day. Let's see how the weekly closes. All these factors are still there. So, you know, it's not fully over just yet. Let's see how the weekly closes. There's still time. There's still hope. But yeah, that's just my honest thoughts. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.